Okay, today is Thursday, 12:26 a.m. It is February 12th. And trading trading is an eye awakening uh it's an eye awakening journey. Trading is. Trading is an eye awakening journey. And I'll make another video of it, hopefully. If I remember, I'll make another video about it. Um, so now, I keep hearing on YouTube when people say, "Well, you want to make it as simple as possible." I can see why I want to make it as simple as possible. If I make it complex, it'll take me a great amount of effort in order to lift off. The first trade, the first few trade is going to be mistake proven, or it may be a day one or day two in the week. Because if something is complex, it's like a computer. Okay, it is like a computer. A computer has a short-term memory and a long-term memory. Okay. Now, usually the short-term memory is very fast, and the long-term memory is slow. Okay, and then there's a processor, and that memory is accessed, retrieved from the short-term memory and a long-term memory. That's how the brain works. Now, if something is complex, it's going to take a lot more to process that information, even if the brain is very fast. But my brain is slow. And so if I make it as simple as possible, then it'll be easier for me to conduct something. When something is complex, the barrier to entry is very high. So that's why when I was in Eugene, Oregon, I was working for a memory company. And memory companies have like memory cells. And these memory cells, when they're manufactured, have problems with it, and so they have to be they have to have redundancy to repair it. But I had no idea. The barrier to entry of understanding redundancy analysis and implementation was so steep that I could not enter into it. I would just fall asleep. I would see somebody do it, and I just fall asleep because it was so complex. And throughout my career, I regretted never being able to understand how to implement the redundancy, even though I was in a company called Teradyne, and they conducted a training, and I didn't even understand it. And I was sitting next to an apps engineer who was practicing it. I just could not understand it. It was so complex because my mind was weak, and I was not prepared to put in the effort in order to understand it. I was not aware what it took. I was not aware what it took for me to become familiar with it. So I can see why things have to be made simple. Simple meaning that it is so simple, anybody can do it. I want to break it down so that it gets to that point. So, so the reason why people talk about in trading, you have to backtest and things like that, right? You have to backtest. So, what is the purpose of backtesting? The purpose of backtesting is to become so familiar with a particular setup that it becomes second nature, right? It becomes second nature. That is the whole point of backtesting. Okay. So when something it becomes second nature, it becomes simple. And so it can be easily retrieved from the short-term memory into the processor, and the processor can process whatever the situation there is. So in trading, if I were to look at any setup, if there's any setup that out there, fundamentally speaking, there is the first thing that needs to occur. Okay? And everything else supports that thesis. Okay? The thesis is this. Okay? There has to be a directional component to make the trade. And in order for me to understand the direction, then what do I need? I need to know where the support is. I have to know where the support is because it keys off of that. It cannot trading cannot proceed without knowing where the support is. Okay? So let's say something does this, comes back, goes up, and then comes back. Okay, at the point where it's inflection, if there's an inflection and goes down, that is essentially the resistance or support. So that means that when I short from here, it has been verified. Now it's going down. So the first thing that I need to do as a trader, the most important thing about trading, the most important, because it is essentially the first step of trading. The first step of trading is to identify where the support is. That's why when I get into a candle that's really big like this, or red or green, okay, it comes down, red candle, it holds, sometimes it'll just bounce right back up. But if I'm trading that candle, if I trade a candle, I'm expecting it to continue and drop. And so in many of the cases, if not in a highly volatile charged condition, it will stop and then reverse up. And then if it wants to, probably it'll start coming down. But what it will do is it'll come down, hold where that support is, and then pop right back up. And what I've noticed in my numerous amount of trades, okay, out of tens of thousands of trades that I made, is this. It drops, and I see it, and my eyes flip over, my brain flips over, I get into a tilt, and then I go short. And when I short, it'll pop right back up, and I lose because I have some size in it, and I lose. I have to get out of it because it reversed, okay? So that's what happens. So what is the first thing that I need to establish in trading? What is the first thing? What is the fundamentally most important thing about trading? What is it? What? Now, I made this point on LinkedIn, and a former friend of mine, we communicated briefly, but he is essentially now a executive level, almost a chief executive. Okay, he's almost a chief executive level person, and so the conversation that we exchange doesn't communicate very well. Okay, because I am a convicted felon living out of my car, and I have another 5 more years on this probation, and I'm trying to figure out how to make $1. I'm trying to figure out how to make $1, but he's making several million bucks a year. Okay, so there's a big contrast, and his sister is apparently a finance minister in India. Okay, so India has a class-based system. It's class-based. Okay, that's why I dislike the culture of India, because it's based on class. I dislike that. That's why America is so great. Okay, there's no class system here. Okay, in America. Okay, but they accept this class-based separation between the common people and the elite people, and then they live by that, right? And so he essentially is an executive level person. And then we exchange communication about it. And one word that we exchange prior to our discontinued communication recently is the one word called support. Okay? It's support. Support is so important. Support is extremely important. Because I was my mother passed away, and I was like, and there was a great hole in my life. Okay? Because she was always my support. Okay, she was the support. My ex-wife was not my support. My kids are not my support. Nobody else is my support. Okay, God accepts me whatever I do. Okay, so if I want to dig deeper into the grave, He'll allow me to dig deeper into the grave. Okay, in that respect, He supports whichever direction I go. Right, but there isn't somebody who is actively engaged in my best welfare. There isn't. Okay. God will help me dig deeper into hell if I want to. God will help me dig higher if I want to be good. But there is not an active individual who supports me despite the fact that I want to be self-destructive. There isn't one, okay? But there was one. Now she's gone, okay? That's support. Support is extremely extremely, extremely important. It took me, I would say, the first time I started trading, uh, essentially gambling, way back, and 2001. In the year 2001, I I took out a credit card and I bought a company called LSI, and then I lost it all, and I didn't touch it for many years down the road. And then as I started to have a little bit of money, I started to dabble into like buying options and selling options, but it was not even knowing what's going on. I had no foundation of what price action is. I Because I'm learning about price action, I am trading price action. Okay, I'm not good at it, but I am fundamentally a price action trader. Okay, I am a price action trader. Now I know the difference between me now and me 20 years back. Okay, there was no foundation in trading. What sounds good? Somebody said, "Hey, you should buy this." I bought, and when something moves against me, I sold because I didn't know anything about trading. Okay, but what I lacked is an understanding of what a price action is and what centered around support. Support. So this friend, the friend who used to be my friend, um, it's all based on support. Even companies. So if somebody is a finance minister of a country, then they know investments, how investments work. And so each company has to have support from customers in order to grow, because there has to be a growing number of support, such as Facebook has a lot of people and they people come in, people grow the company, and that's support. So then, uh, so then, so then I thought, okay, so now recently I'm trying to understand. Now I'm understanding what is the most important about support. What is the most important thing about trading? What is it? What is fundamentally the most important thing? Okay, fundamentally the most important thing is based on support. It has to be supported. Everything surrounds into the creation of support. Even me, I need to support myself so that capable. I'm capable of performing the duties as a trader. That means I have to eat well. That's support. I have to sleep well. That's support. I have to be physically conditioned. So that's support. Okay? And I have to be mentally sharp in order to be focused on the job of being a trader. Okay, that's support. I'm supporting myself. Okay? That is supporting myself. Then I was confused because even knowing about price action, there was like I'm going through Albrook's training course and I'm understanding. I'm trying to figure out how that works and things like that. And so I'm trying to understand it. And when I'm trying to understand it, there's so many things. Like there's like there's quite a few things. Uh, uh, there's like a uh, so there's quite a few things that he talks about, but I think subconsciously I don't want to disclose it, but that's his program. Okay, there's quite a few things that he talks about, so I don't want to talk about it. Okay, I have an idea. I've seen it multiple times. There's various things that he talks about, but you have to go through his course to understand it. I'm not gonna divulge what he teaches. Maybe that's why I can't. That's why I don't want to disclose what's going on, which is a detriment to me, right? But he describes, so how should I put it? He describes the behavior of the market. Okay, he describes the behavior of the market with price action as an emphasis. He talks about support and resistance. He talks about the way that it is trending up, trending down. He talks about the Y band, the narrow band. He talks about the range bound, how that can be traded. He takes about the breakout strategy. There's like three types of trading that he does: trending up, trending down, and breakout, and things like that, right? Three setups that a beginner trader should know, kind of thing, right? In a bonus section. So he talks about that. He describes it. He I mean, there's like always in kind of a trading. Okay, there's uh or there's always, so there's various ways of looking at it, right? There's various ways of seeing how each candle behave itself, and looking to the left side, how that can be how that can be extrapolated to continue with the next steps, right? That's the idea. So, so the most important part, the first thing that I need to establish is then, which is very hard. It's incredibly difficult to do. Okay, because I get mixed up. I get mixed up uh, into believing something else is more important because my mind does not have clarity when it's time for me to start trading because it's confused because it forgot for one. Okay, and then there's that emotion that hides it, and so I tend to forget. So the simplest thing that now has popped into my mind is the simplest and the most important part. The first step of trading is to establish the support. Okay, this the most the first thing. So if I were to like, okay, so I walk all the time. I walk all the time, but I don't know what the first thing I need to do. So what is the first step? So when I say, okay, so well, I have to put the foot on the first. I have to take my right foot, put it in front, and then I have to do these things, right? So I've heard of these things people talk about. Learning, describing how somebody walks is so difficult. That's what they say, right? It is difficult. Because first of all, what is the position that I'm in? What is the reset condition? Okay? Based on what the reset condition is, then it defines how it's going to proceed. What is the current condition? Okay, what is the current condition? So if I'm about to describe how somebody walks, then I have to firstly describe what my current condition is. What arrangement am I in? Okay, am I sitting down? Am I lying down? Am I wearing shoes? Okay, so do I have something else going on that I need to defer it for a little bit, or what's the current situation? Okay, as soon as I describe what the current situation is, then I can take the following steps in order to take that first step. Okay, the first step. So, for instance, so I can give an example, right? So I'm sitting down, I'm making this YouTube video, okay? Now I'm going to take the first step. That means that I'm sitting down, okay? And then my chair is towards the desk, which means that I have so then what is the first step? So I need to turn around, right? I need to turn so that I don't have to turn, okay? I can just push the chair back and then stand up. So there's multiple ways of the starting position, right? So let's say I'm sitting down. That means that I can push my chair back, or I can just turn, and then I can stand up, and I can take the first step, which normally will be my right foot, and then I'll take the left foot, and that would be the first step that I take, right? So then, okay, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Okay, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Okay, I am. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. So in order for me to make it as simple as possible, okay, I'm making it as simple as possible. And this is despite the fact that I'm repeating words and things like that, but this is very, very important. This is something, it means that I don't understand. And to this point, to this day, I don't understand what the first step is. What is the first thing that I need to do? When somebody throws a pitch, what is the first thing that I need to do? Okay, that's how consistency works. Without me knowing what the sequences are in making a trade, proper trade, then how am I supposed to be consistent? Okay, so I have to develop. So I'm like assuming that I understand how something works. I'm assuming. I'm assuming initially. I am assuming that I understand how something is. It's like me saying, okay, I've seen plenty times how people play in the NBA, how to play basketball, right? Right? But it's truly not the same thing because there's so many things that are hiding behind the scenes that allow somebody to go on the the free throw line and make that shot, right? There's a lot of things involved. It looks easy. It looks very, very easy, but there's a lot of things that are involved in conducting that, right? So in trading, okay, this is more so for me than anybody else. This is it. I'm attempting to I'm essentially attempting to fully describe, okay? I'm attempting to fully describe how trading, uh, step by step, how it works. Step by step. I'm trying to describe it so that I can become consistent. So, so if I don't know, then I don't know how to identify. Okay, so the whole purpose, okay, so the whole purpose of trading, the first step is to define the support, okay? That's the first step, I think, okay? At this stage, I think the first step is to define what the support is. I have to define it because everything works off of it, okay? Because everything works off of it. If I define the support, that means that if the price is here, then I can put the stop loss here, and then I can figure out where the resistance is based off of this support. So essentially, the support is a point of reference. Support is a point of reference, okay? Support is a point of reference where everything else depends on it, okay? Support is a point of reference, okay? Support is point of reference, okay? Because it tells me where I can put the, right? I know, so stop loss goes below the support. It doesn't go above, okay? It goes below. And profit target is above, okay? So everything keys off of this thing called support. And if I'm like shorting, it's going to be resistance, okay? So it's based on that. All right? So everything is based off of something called support. It's a point of reference, okay? It's a level of reference. It's a point of reference, okay? It's a point of reference in the landscape of price action. Support is the point of reference, and everything keys off of it. Everything is based off of it. Everything, okay? Everything is based off of it. Everything is based off of it, okay? Everything, okay? Everything is based off of that reference. Everything in life is based off of that single point of reference, which is the support, okay? So that means I cannot make a trade until I identify that support. And when the things are heated, I just trade without confirming. So that means that how do I identify a support? How? Okay, how do I identify a support? Okay, how do I identify the support? Okay, this, by the way, is everybody has to trade this way. There's no exception at all. There's no exception. Okay, that's how trading works. Trading across the board, everybody has to work with support. Everybody, in their own terminology, whether it's going to be liquidity, where there's supply, where there's demand, whatever it is, everybody has to work off of this concept called support. Okay, it's support. Everybody has to work off of it. Everybody, no exception at all, none whatsoever. Okay, none whatsoever. Even if you're selling options as to make a living, you have to know where the support and resistance is. Okay, so that you could put a straddle, whatever you need to do, right? Whatever you need to do, you have to figure out where the support and resistance is in order to figure out how to trade, how to place your bets on, so that later on those options become zero. That's what you have to do. You have to figure out where that support is, like a month down the road or something, or a week down the road, so that you can straddle it, so that you know that when it gets there, both sides of it turns to zero. That's the idea, okay? Right? Now, it doesn't have to be zero to make money. One side it could just go on one side. It could just go towards one side and then overcome the other side, right? When it moved. Okay, anyway, that's option strategy, right? So the first step So the first step is to define support. Okay? So the most important part about trading is defining the support. It really is. The most important part for me is defining the support. Unless I see, it's obvious. It's obvious. Now that I'm talking about it, it's obvious. It's obvious. It's so obvious. But I thought that I knew. I was fooling myself. I was fooling myself into believing that I knew what I was doing, and that's why I was risking money. Why would I risk money if I don't know what I'm doing? Because I was a fool. Okay? I was a fool. All right? I would put money in it even though I didn't know how to trade. I didn't even know. I'm talking about the support thing right now after 5 years because I'm trying to figure this out. And this talk with myself is very important. Okay? So now I am finally learning what is most important about trading. Okay? Okay, so now I've established the one word, the one word that is the most important thing is support. Okay, so now I have to like concretely understand. Okay, what, how do I define support? How do I make sure? Now there's quite a few people who are on YouTube. They talk about this too, and how trading is made based on identifying what the support is. Whether something is trending down, whether trending is up, whether it's going to be based on a horizontal line, or whether it's going to be an angled line, but it's going to be based on identifying what the support is, and that's why it's so important. Is identifying that critical line, which is the support, understanding what the support is. That's the most important part, right? So so then what are the means? I have to figure out all the means to identify everything. I have to become in order for me to see, everything else becomes easier when I identify that support area, because I know what that support area is, and there's no questions about, did I put the stop loss at the right place, or did I not place the stop loss in the right place? Okay, there's no question about it. There's no need to question anything else, because it is going to be based on. See, it's like this. Okay, there's a thing called CAPA. Okay, and when a product is very similar to somebody else's product, and I'm an engineer who uses a software that this other group made, and I have to verify that this software was made correctly. Okay, and if I fail, and the software was not made correctly, then I'm going to fail. Okay, but I may not know it. So then the person who's using the similar product has to write the same software, but when they ask me, hey, did you verify it? And I say, oh yeah, I did verify it. Okay, but I failed to verify it correctly. Okay, it's called a corrective action something something. Okay, and so what happens is so what happens is the person says, hey, you did all the hard work. I don't have to do anything about it. So the person just releases it, thinking that because the software that this other group made is just linked, okay, and so it's not the main part of his program. And so what happens is my program has a problem. Now his program has a problem because it's based on my program, because he believes that my program was supported based on my hard work. He was trying to use my hard work, but I failed. Now his is failed, and so we both are in a mess. Okay, that's what happens. Okay, that's how important support is. And so when I'm losing, then it's going to be, so that means in trading I lose because I was not able to properly identify what the support is, and that's why I failed. Okay, that's how that works. So that means in trading, what the most important thing is essentially defining the support area. Support. When I identify the support, it tells me what the stop loss needs to be. It tells me what the profit target has to be. So it makes everything else simple. It makes everything else simple. If I can make identification of support complex to the point where it is complex initially, but as I start to develop into the complexity and then taking that complexity and making it simple, that in itself will make everything else simple. Okay, it's just, everything else just comes along because I know where that support is, because everything else is based on that support. It's the reference point. It's a point of reference. It's a point of reference. Okay, it is a point of reference. I'm using that as a point of reference. That's it. That's it. That's the point of reference, right? That's the reference. Okay, that is the reference. That is the reference. Do you hear me? This is it. This is it. Like Jeremy Irons at a margin call, he's calling up the executives in his company, uh, I mean, late at night, because they have this housing tranches that are about to like there that is about to put the company under. Okay, and so he's saying this is it. This is the big one. Okay, this is a big one. This is essentially this is essentially the crux of what trading is, and nobody told me about it. There isn't anybody out there who's saying who's making. I haven't seen it. Okay, there's a lot of things that are discussed, like stop losses, everything. They talk about all sorts of kind of things, but the most important part that makes everything connect together is to define what the support is, because people get focused on trying to figure out how the psychology, how what the problem is with the psychology, right? But if everything has been systematized, okay, when everything has been broken down and systematized, then there's no involvement in the mind, because I already set it. I already set the stop loss. I already set the profit target. And so it's a matter of, it's like writing a software and I'm just unleashing the software and letting it run while I'm like walking over to Walmart, getting going to Costco, pick up a hot dog for about $1.50 while something is running. That's it. There's there's nothing else to worry about. There's really nothing to worry about. So the hardest part about any situation, looking at it from a price action perspective, is even looking at it from a fundamental perspective. Okay, based on this valuation, the price has to be here. Okay, even if it's dropping, the valuation of the company is going to be here, and that's why people like Warren Buffett is Berkshire Hathaway. They're able to buy a company, okay, pay a little premium, expecting the value is going to be two birds in the bush. Okay, there's a bird in hand, but there's two birds in the bush. Okay, all right, that's how that works. So now I'm looking at that from that perspective. So now my job as a trader, the primary, so the so if I were to describe this, like Jeremy Irons says, hey, think of me like a like an infant, and explain it to me. Okay, so I would say that the first thing is you have to define what the support is. Okay, learn everything about support. Learn everything about support. Okay. Okay, learn everything about support. Okay, learn learn everything that could cause support. Okay, so I've learned about. Okay, so one thing that gives a clue is that if the price hits it, and then responds, and then goes somewhere else, and then comes back and hits it again, then I can say, hey, that's support. But support is anytime it hits it and it responds to it is support. The strength of it, the strength of it is going to be based on the strength of it is based on how the price is going to react after it hits it, right? Goes down, bounces up, comes back, okay, rolls around, and then breaks out. Then that's a very strong support, okay? There could be a soft support, but there could be a strong support too, right? So that's one way. So that's the identification of support. Some people use some sort of like Fibonacci retracement, right? So when the price moves down, then it's going to retrace, knowing that that's going to be support, and based on support, the Fibonacci is going to create a certain statistical probability that it's going to move to a certain area based on that support. Okay, it starts from the top, where it launches, and then goes down, establishes a support, and that Fibonacci number provides a 23% or 37% or whatever percent it is, and then it has a likely scenario of how the price is going to move from that support area. Okay, so essentially, see, I didn't know about this stuff 20 years ago, not even yesterday. I didn't even know yesterday until I started talking about it and thinking about the some people on YouTube, they mention about the moving averages, okay? And some people on SMB Capital, they use something called they talk about this average, okay? It is VWAP. It's volume weighted average price. They talk about that, right? That's different than just the moving average, because it incorporates the volume into the average, okay? So if there's a billion shares that are traded at this price, it's going to have a greater impact on the price level than something the average than something is a low value later on down the road, right? Like a thousand shares versus a billion shares, right? So that's how it works. Now, that means the critical component of understanding how trading is. I thought placing stop loss was very difficult, but it's not. It's not that difficult because it's fundamentally based on the stop loss. Okay, if I know where the stop loss is, then I know where to put the what. So I thought the critical component of trying to figure out how to trade is to identify where the stop loss is. But the stop loss is based on that support. And so as long as I define what the support is, then I can always put it underneath that support. Okay? That's how it works. Stop loss used to be very complex. But now it is simpler because it's based on, it's like going through a mathematical equation. Okay? So f open paren, close paren, based on x comma y is equal to some function, okay? So some function, okay? Some sort of a curvature function. But that curvature function is based on the x and a y component of that equation, okay? And so that x and a y component of the function based on the derivative. If I take the derivative, which means that the dynamic component, looking at it from the perspective of a single value, whether it's going to be x or y, and then if I look at it from the x or y perspective, that means that the y component of that function, the y variable, is a constant for that analysis, okay? And that variability, which is the x, is essentially the support function of it, okay? So that means that even though the stop loss is the y component, when something is considered looking at it from a fixed perspective with the x component being the variable and taking the derivative in the moving, because the x is moving, okay? And then y is based on that x. And so when I look at it purely from the perspective of purely from the base of, because the y component can be securities, different types of securities have a different way of moving, okay? So that's how it works. And so when I look at it from the x component, which is essentially the support area, okay, then I can put the y variable, which is essentially the stop loss, and then the z variable, which is going to be the profit target, right? So it's all based on where that component is, right? So now I've established reasoning things out, which is something that I was not able to do a couple days ago, 3 days ago, when I was losing my challenge because I was not focused on what was important, because everything was so complex. And when everything is so complex, I get bogged down into understanding because I wasn't able to make it as simple as possible. And making it as simple as possible is to really clearly think about what is really happening. What is happening? Okay, everything is based on support. Okay, everything is based on it's keying off of that support. Okay, once I figure out what that is, then I am able to move on. Now that I've established what is the most important thing, which is essentially the support. Now my job now is to identify the confluences that define that support area. Okay, there's quite a few ways to define what support is. Okay, there's quite a few ways. The price reacts to it. Until the price reacts to it, I don't see. Even if the price reacts to it, it could be a pullback and not a reversal. Okay, so 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 a pullback is essentially a momentary support. Okay, pullback right there is support right there. So it hits that, pops back, and then breaks through. Okay, that's a momentary support area. So there could have been a momentary buy condition that occurs. For example, let's say somebody sold a bunch and they just wanted to close it out right here, so it pulled it up and then started to go down. Right? That's what happens. Simple, simple, simple. Right? So then I have to become a master. I have to become extraordinaire. I have to become a professional of identifying where the support is. It's that's all. It is that simple. Trading is that simple. If I am extremely good at defining where the support is, then trading is a foregone conclusion. It is. It really is. Okay. Okay. Today's Thursday. Okay. So that means trading is essentially a foregone conclusion, uh, as long as I find out where the support is. Right. And there are various ways to identify. There are various ways to identify where the support is. Quite a few ways, and so I have to become the expert. I have to become an expert at defining support, because I am a price action trader, and I am trading based on support. And then if I figure out what the support is, psychology just moves out of the way. I don't even have to worry about psychology, because I just set the number and I allow the statistical probability to take a foothold, and every trade is based on the statistical probability. I don't have to worry about it. My mind doesn't have to worry about it. I just look at it. I'm either right or wrong. That's it. Okay? I am wrong or right, whatever the situation is. Okay? And there's no psychology involved, because I am just using the statistical probability. Okay? So I just named one already. If the price reacts, it could be a pullback. But if something bounces twice, there's a higher chance that it is a reversal. But if there's only one bounce and then comes back, then that is essentially a pullback. Okay? And the distinction between those two are very, very important. So now I have to look through it, comb through it, figure out all the things that are impacting what support is. Okay? I have to figure out what causes support. Okay? My job now, okay? I am 56 years old. In a few months I'll be 57 years old, okay? But my job right now is to identify a means to define support. My job right now in totality is to define what support is. Once I define that support, then everything makes it easy. The psychology goes away. Okay, the hard thinking about the stop loss is gone. The hard thinking about like profit target is gone too. Now risk size, it can be adjusted based on where the stop loss is. It's all based on statistical probability, right? It's based on statistical probability. So now I'm going to figure out, okay, what are all the things that are impacting the support and resistance, and then I'm going to become extremely good at it. And when I am extremely good at it, then I'll be able to port that into whatever I'm doing. Okay, simple.